Good morning, everybody. I'm Sally Andreu. I'm the Skills Hub Manager at OxLEP. I'd like to welcome you to our second provider forum. I hope you're keeping well. We have got a fantastic agenda for you today. We've got the format of the forum. Katie, if you could, thank you. Please raise your hand or use a chat box to ask questions. Webcam's off at the moment, and we'll unmute you to ask if you'd like to ask a question. The session will be recorded. If you don't want your message to be left, please let us know and we'll remove your question. We'll share the recording and presentation slides later. The agenda's on the right of the screen under the OxLEP Provider Forum agenda and the survey at the end. Next slide, please. So the agenda, we've got Sally Dickett, who's going to be chairing. Really, it's going to be a discussion point for yourselves about the Local Skills Action Plan we've been commissioned to create on behalf of the local Department of Education. Sally, as you're aware, she's the new AOC President, Chief Executive of Activate Learning, and she's also the Oxfordshire Skills Board Deputy Chair. We're going to be sharing our new LMI Webtool, which has been created through Oxford Artificial Intelligence. And we'll be really interested to see how you think you might be using this Webtool. It's free to use. It's for Oxfordshire. It's a live data that you'll be able to see. And we're really excited to share that with you today. We've got Luke Mattam from Oxfordshire County Council, who's going to talk about actual destination data and why it's important for the county, but also for providers actually gathering that data and how it's used for young people. And finally, we've got James Jackson, and he's newly in post at OAS, the Oxfordshire Advanced Skills Centre down at down at Harwell, and he's actually going to talk about diversity inclusion within apprenticeships and how potentially as providers we can work together and look at this really important programme. And then we're looking at future agenda items at the end. So we've got a packed agenda, but hopefully you'll find it informative and interesting, and really we want it to be as interactive as possible. Next slide, please. So just to give you an update from our last meeting, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who took the time to complete our COVID-19 provider survey. The results of this was submitted as evidence to the All-Parliamentary Group on Apprenticeships in July. This was actually a cross-party group of MPs and peers which were gathered to discuss how to promote the role of high-quality apprenticeships. The evidence gathered was used to develop a series of policy recommendations that the group believe will be an increase to uptake and improve the delivery of apprenticeships. Some of our findings are quoted in the report that was produced as a result. And I think what I wanted to highlight here was really to show that actually government is using the LEP in various ways to inform and influence strategy. And that really leads us on to the local skills report that we've been commissioned to create. Next slide, please, Katie. Thank you. Next one. So I just wanted to step back and give you a bit of an overview again. This was a slide that we showed at the last meeting, which highlights the work that we as a LEP are doing, particularly from a skills perspective with the various government agencies. So, for example, we're working with BEIS on the social contract that's been created through the local industrial strategy. There's also now a prospectus that's on our website of all the different programmes and projects that are ready to go if we had the funding. We're working with government on the ARC, which includes Buckinghamshire LEP, SEMLEP, and Cambridge and Peterborough Mayoral Combined Authority. And just to kind of repeat myself, but I think it's really important, it's looking at access to core skills training, the ambition is to have 65% of employees with level 3 skills by 2025, and it also includes university initiatives. So that's a really key piece of work that's going to be continuing in depth as we move forwards. Department of Education, I've highlighted that in yellow, so that's the Skills Advisory Panel, which we're going to discuss today, and the Local Skills Action Plan. And finally, with the ESFA, we're working with T-levels, industrial placements and apprenticeships. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the local skills report, which we're going to create for Department of Education, this has been commissioned through our skills board, which has taken on the additional responsibilities of the Skills Advisory Panel, which we're calling a SAP. Because it has really the same ambitions as with the two bodies, and that is to create local partnerships that strengthen the link between public and private sector employers, local authorities, colleges and universities, and operates at a local level to ensure local people are trained for the jobs that are available. So the report has got a deadline for December 2020. It's going to be updated in November next year, and there's going to be a fuller version refresh every 2 years. And it's an evidence base that looks at Oxfordshire, and this is happening across England, across all the various 38 LEP areas. So the government agencies, and that's through the Skills and Productivity Board that's been newly created, and central government will be able to look and see. We've got to create this report using their template so they can see what are the opportunities for funding and investment for through our local skills provision. And that's why it's really important that we have your input on this. We want to hear your voices. It's going to government. It's really important that we can identify what the discussion points, what are the challenges. We also really want to look at what's successful. What we would like to hear about best practice, positive impact stories and case studies which can be included in this report. So leading on to that, I'm delighted to welcome Sally to lead this part of the agenda. Sally, you there? Sorry, I think we've lost Sally.
Right,
Is she?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Welcome, Sally. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm not sure if I'm on, off, or on the camera.
You're off at the moment, but we can hear you. There you are. We can see you. We can see you on camera.
Thank you. Yeah, and doesn't that look like a nice photograph? The reality isn't quite the same. Can I welcome everybody to this segment? And this really is your opportunity to feed into the skills report. And it's how can we in Oxfordshire meet the skills and labour market needs, but we're aware that you actually need to do it with financial viability, and often it's at scale, and we don't want to dilute the market so much that nobody can survive. And I just think for Oxfordshire, we've normally had very low unemployment, but we can see for the first time this is creeping up. Some employment sectors have actually done very well out of COVID-19, but as many of us in this room know, there are many sectors that are seriously suffering. They're having to furlough or make redundant their staff. And actually, what is it that we can do in this room and ask of government to help us? I think we all know it's money, so I don't think we need to, and I think the skills board know it's money. So it's all the other things that you think we need to put in the report that would help all of us either retrain or upskill people who are already in employment to do those two things. So I could bore for Britain on this, but I'm going to shut up and open it to the floor on the types of things you would like to see in our skills report to help resolve the retraining and upskilling issues that we will now face in Oxfordshire. Silence. Does anybody want to Although if you're anything like me trying to use the computer, I failed to get in and then I failed to unmute. So does anybody either want to ask a question or raise anything that they would like to put in this report? Oh, it could be a really short day then.
We've got a hand up here from Fiona. I'm just going to unmute you, Fiona.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks very much. I don't know whether this is the right session to raise it, but the Career Service at the University of Oxford, we have always taken work experience students, and I'm really keen that this is part of the report, because I think it's something that some of the kind of local institutions and organisations can offer on a relatively scalable program, especially if there's a way that we can do it remotely for young people.
And are you still doing it remotely, Fiona?
Well, no, because the sort of correspondence has sort of stopped, and I can understand that, you know, we haven't been approached, but actually we've designed a program. So I work with some of the poorest students at Oxford University. They're called the Crankstart Scholars, and they designed a program for us to help 15 and 16-year-old school pupils upskill or reflect on the skills that they already had and how to apply those in really practical terms to CVs, and getting them to think a little bit more broadly in terms of what they can do at the age of 15 to prepare not only for higher education, that's not our aim at all, but to really understand a little bit about their own values, what they want to do, and how they can kind of harness existing skills, you know, having organised a holiday for their family, or, you know, undertaken work at their local mosque, or taught a younger sibling. All those things are very pertinent for that particular age group. And I'm really keen, I'm really happy to be involved in a little bit, you know, designing some more of these programs. And I just don't want to, we've invested, well, I've personally invested quite heavily in creating this program, and I don't want COVID to kind of get in the way. This is stuff that we can run remotely. Sorry if this wasn't the right time to make that statement. But
no, I think that's helpful, Fiona, and I think offline, I think we should pick that up, because I'm sure a lot of us are struggling, particularly with T-levels, and some people have been excellent on offering remote work experience, and other people just can't. So if there's somebody who's got that work experience, I suspect you'll now be inundated. So thank you very much.
That's fine. No
really
worries. Thank you.
Supportive and helpful. Thank you. Is there anybody else that is on the upskilling challenge? Particularly, I'll give an example, and it was actually KPMG that did this. KPMG worked with the health service to retrain the airline staff during COVID to actually go and work in hospitals. They collaboratively with a group of training providers and them wrote online packages. They then took all the staff who were airline staff who'd done a lot on health and safety and customer service, and they then trained mainly online with, I think, 2 days actually in a London hospital, and then they were recertified and are now working in hospitals. And what we're looking for in Oxfordshire is, could we have collaboration between colleges, independent training providers, universities, to actually look at how we could together share the cost of that and do some online retraining and target, whether it's administrative skills, who will probably lose some of their roles because of automation, or people in jobs which now face redundancy. And that is one idea, certainly, that I have seen myself, which was highly successful at upskilling or retraining a group of people during COVID who were out of jobs. And I don't know
Sally.
in other areas.
Can I just interrupt? We've got a hand up from Shilpa. Could I unmute you, Shilpa? You may also need to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Shilpa. I'm the apprenticeship manager at Oxford University Hospitals. So we had been part of the project Wingman and was very successful. We had the airline staff with us for 2 weeks, and then we followed it up by giving them skills and what jobs would be available, particularly in NHS, where we still have skills shortages. So that's one area that still needs people with some specific skills. I can put you in touch with the person who led that. So if you want to replicate it locally, there would be some learning and that. So that's another thing. T levels was another things I wanted to talk to you about. Was it's a good way to upskill young people, but also, so we are piloting T levels with activate learning in 2 areas. One is healthcare, and the other one is business. And we've done a pilot. There's some learning, obviously, but it's a good way to give them clear routes. So we're looking at then giving them pathways following T levels, and I think that's something we could ask money for, that following T levels, what pathways are on offer. So for each individual, subject or sector area, we could look at it.
And it might be worth following some of that and actually giving it as good examples, both the wingmen and the T levels, because they're both areas that the government are really keen on. So if we can put some examples of what we're doing and how we can broaden it, that would be worth it.
Yeah, we've got a kind of a video clip for a T level student, which has been was commissioned by ESFA anyway. So it's in collaboration with them. So that's a good example that's happened in Oxfordshire. And the other thing I wanted to say, we also piloting supported traineeship. Not many people are doing supported traineeship. With COVID, we did have challenges, and we still are having challenges to place them in a hospital environment. So early days, we've just managed to put 2 of our first 5. From the first cohort, we had 5, and we're starting them back slowly. But yeah, another area we could work on or seek extra funding for the most vulnerable, I would say. Yeah.
Lovely, that is really helpful. Has anybody got asks for the, say, over 50s? How do we actually ensure those over 50s aren't just spat out and left on a heap, particularly when, their skills would be useful if we could transfer them, a bit like the example of the airline staff?
Now I have a hand up from Ed, Sally. I'm just going to unmute you, Ed, if that's okay. It may be to do with the previous point, because I know you put your hand up a few minutes ago. You might need to unmute yourself as well, Ed. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good morning. Edward Collett, Abingdon and Whitney College. I think I'll just pick up on that point about the over 50s, but I had another thought as well. So I think for the over 50s, it may be working proactively, almost at an individual level with people to identify where their skills are and encourage and support them to go for either specific apprenticeship vacancies or specific opportunities. Because I think thinking of them as a whole cohort, they're going to have such different experiences and qualities. It would almost be a case of working with them on an individual basis. And that kind of links in with the other point I was thinking about, employees affected by automation or redundancy, is that there needs to be and it's easy to say, but I think there needs to be some mechanism from the employers to almost put their hands up and say, listen, we're in a real sticky situation here. We're considering having to make a significant number of staff redundant, or we're having to consider letting a significant number of people go, and we realise we have a responsibility and duty for these people, and what should we do? So I think probably the training providers and colleges are here and ready to support and spring into action and assist and do all that good stuff that you described in your example. But I think there needs to be a mechanism for the employers to kind of almost fess up and say, you know, we're going to have to do this. Can someone help us? And then I think people, you know, will be willing to engage at that point.
I think that's really helpful, Ed. And in some ways, two things that we could look for the skills report, and we may have them or not. I'm just is one, do we have an instrument also to analyse individual skills? Because people are very bad. You know, I've worked as a, I don't know, college principal for years. I only have these skills. You forget all the other skills that you've acquired along the way. So it's that instrument that really asks the right questions to get the fullness of somebody's skill portfolio, and then work out the gaps of training for them to then get a job. So that could be something we could ask in our skills report. And I think your other point again is really well made, which is persuading employers to actually publish this. And I get the sensitivity, rather than make everybody redundant and they're on the heap, is actually to do it so we can pick them up before they actually leave work, as they're leaving work. So I think both of those are really, really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And we had a comment to say that agree with Ed, we need partnership with employers and providers. This was from Shilpa, so both the examples that she mentioned had strong provider partners. Can we go to Nick Ribeiro now, please? I'm just going to unmute you, Nick. Hi, Nick. We can't hear you, Nick. Shall I read your comment out? And if you can join us, then please do. So Nick said, are employers affected by automation? Does the opportunity exist to embrace the tools that can improve processes, for example? This may free up staff to work on future strategies. Also, is it possible that L&D departments need to step up to help upskill and support future strategy?
I would agree that most businesses know, because automation is a big investment, and therefore it would be good to release the staff and start training them to do other things early. And I can't comment, different businesses have a different size of learning and development. So big business tends to have fairly sophisticated learning and development. Are smaller, and we do have quite a lot of small and medium-sized companies in Oxfordshire. They don't have such a sophisticated learning and development, which is why they do need us as training providers. But again, perhaps if we could work collaboratively together, we could have a centre where a company that's small, that's going for automation, could land and actually use us because we're near them to actually do some of that development. So again, I think it's quite an interesting idea for the skills report about how do we work with medium-sized businesses without learning and development who are automating, and give them the information about all the training providers in Oxfordshire that could help them out. So I think that's, again, it's a really good idea to look at and take forward. So thank you, and sorry you can't speak, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I'm not sure, there was a problem with sound there, I think. Sorry about that, Nick, but I hope that answers your question, and we've got your questions recorded in the chat anyway. And we've got a hand up from Fiona. I'll just unmute you, Fiona.
Brilliant, thank you. It's a question for Ed, actually. I was really interested in what he was saying about further education colleges like Abingdon. And my question is, are there already courses for midlife career changes, people who want to upskill, that local employers could direct the over 50s to specifically?
Yeah, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. So I mean, we have a range of courses. I mean, we have our Oxfordshire Adult Learning brand, which is, you know, adult learning provision, part of which is reskills or employability skills, IT and digital skills, stuff like that. We also get a whole range of people applying for our apprenticeship vacancies already. Probably 2/3 of our apprentices are 19 or older. So actually apprenticeships are already a really common way for people to reskill or, change career. One example that springs to mind is our horticulture programs. We have quite significant numbers of people every year who come into a horticulture apprenticeship who have spent 10, 15, 20 years working in offices or other occupations, and are then thinking that they want to change and go in a completely different direction. So yeah, there is some provision already, but having something specific is entirely possible, and something bespoke for specific employers or situations is possible as well.
I think you'll find, Fiona, that there's several both independent training providers on this call, and most training providers will do work for people who want to retrain or upskill. The difficulty often is there's so much out there, and it's actually finding out what those needs are.
It's available.
I think that's why Nick's idea perhaps of holding those as one of the things for the local skills report, so you know what they are. And often people specialise in different things. So as Ed said, is they are specialists in horticulture, land-based for Oxfordshire. There'll be somebody else here that's probably a specialist in, I'm going to make it up, underwater knitting. And we need to collect those so that if you have somebody who wants to retrain in horticulture, to send them to Abingdon and Whitney. And if it's underwater knitting, it's ex-training provider. So that might help you know where you need to go to.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. We're almost out of time for that this section now. We just got one more quick comment from Sophie, if that's okay. If I unmute you, Sophie Sudborough.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sophie from SGO Training. We specialise in digital apprenticeships, and I agree with all the comments made, and just wanted to reiterate, I think obviously working with employers that are making redundancies is key, and also working with employers that have opportunities is key, because I know a lot of SMEs out there don't know about the new government incentives that are in place at the moment. They don't know the benefits of apprenticeships. We're still trying to get the word out. So I think reaching out to all those small, medium enterprises is really going to benefit those people being made redundant. So you've got to work on both sides.
Thank you. I would agree. Although it's really sad, so much has been put into trying to make everybody aware, and they're not. So I don't disagree with you. I just think we need to work even harder. Can I finish this section by thanking all of you enormously for your contribution, and can you be assured that this now will go forward, and your ideas will go forward to make sure that they're in our skills report. And there's some really great ideas here, though. Thank you enormously. And I think I'm handing over to Sarah now.
Next slide,
Good
please.
morning. Hello, I'm Sarah Marlowe, Deputy Skills Hub Manager from OxLEP, and I'm going to be talking to you or introducing you to some representatives from Oxford Artificial Intelligence to discuss the new labour market information web tool that hopefully you'll be able to use as educational establishments. So as Sally, or both the Sallys have mentioned earlier, the SAP remit this year is to produce a local skills report, and to underpin that, an analytical insight into the local skills landscape, and to provide underpinning evidence for that report. So this will be a single consistent report across all the skills advisory panels in the country, based on a set of key data indicators. And that has been guided by the Department for Education Skills Advisory Panel Programme team. These reports will inform the work of the new Skills and Productivity Board. That's an expert committee established by the Department for Education to provide the government with independent advice and analysis on skills mismatches, and to help ensure that the skills system is aligned to employers' future needs. Much of the data required is very much like the OxLEP local labour market information, which I presented to this group at the first of these forums earlier this year. The data will include extracts from publicly published data sets as recommended by the Department for Education's SAP team and presented to answer the prescribed Department for Education analyses. So OxLEP Skills wanted to create a data warehouse, sustainable and bringing together the local labour market information and the indicators set out in the SAP's toolkit, which could be used for this reporting, but also for use by all OxLEP stakeholders, such as members of this forum. And we recognise the value of housing all this information in one place to support stakeholder activities. Therefore, we've commissioned a web tool by Oxford Artificial Intelligence to enable a variety of users like yourselves to analyse and define the local Oxfordshire skills landscape, including skills demand in the area, skills supply, enabling mapping of demand and supply to support identification of gaps. Our vision is to provide you with a tool which also helps you to respond to working in the new normal. The web tool will be vital to support in our understanding of the skills landscape and how we can help inform the decisions people make about learning and work. So I'd now like to introduce you to Adam Saunders and Daniel Pesh of Oxford Artificial Intelligence, who are going to provide you with sight of this new web tool and an induction to using it. Afterwards, there will be time for questions and answers, and we're also keen to understand how you or your colleagues might find use for this tool and what improvements or developments you'd like to see going forward. So over to Adam Saunders from Oxford Artificial Intelligence.
Thanks very much, Sarah.
Welcome.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can, Adam, yes, thank you.
Okay,
welcome.
Great. So I'm going to keep my words fairly brief so that my colleague Daniel Pesh can show the tool and begin the demonstration to make best use of the time. Daniel, you can put up the tool at this point through the screen share. What I would just say is that the tool is meant, as Sarah has said, to bring together all within one data warehouse or one roof, all of the prescribed data sets by the Department for Education, and also additional labour market intelligence data sets, and to create sort of a one place or one source to go and access all of these. And we think that this is the first of its kind within the LEP network. What we've done here, as you can see from the starting page, is to break this down by user group, and that was prescribed by OxLEP in terms of its own specifications. So first there's Oxfordshire economic stakeholders, which will be a tool for professional users, specifically in relation to economic planning or policy making. But we have one that's specifically for employers and educators, which we think is a bit more focused in terms of the sorts of indicators which relate to both groups. And then finally, there's one, as you can see at the bottom there, for career seekers, which is much more focused on school children who are entering different career pathways and educational pathways, and also those post-16 who will be entering into different career pathways. And finally, there may be scope for also incorporating what Sally Dicketts has just talked about, the retraining element in those who are older and more progressed in the labour market. So I'm going to hand it over to Daniel, who's going to show you the different data sets, how it works, and how you can use the tools. Over to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to hop right in. I'm doing a demonstration of the tool, and then we can have a few questions afterwards if you have any. So this is the main website that you will land on once the tool is published on the OxLEP homepage. And you can enter the Webtool for employers and educators just by clicking on this middle link. And this is the rough layout of the tool. You have a left-hand side panel that is for navigation, and you see these headings in this teal color. These relate to all the categories of data sets that the DFE has provisioned for this tool. And you can see that they are grouped in a variety of topics like job market, skills and labor, etc. And on the right-hand side, you have any number of these visualization elements. Each visualization element might be a line chart, might be an area chart, it could also be bar charts or maps, is covering one of the indicators provided by the DFE. If we have a time series, as for example for this indicator here, which is the total employee jobs in Oxfordshire, you can also manipulate the chart by just dragging and dropping things around. It's quite interactive, the tool. So you can customize this line chart, for example, if you want to present something on the development of the labor market just between 2010 and 2014. You can also browse the data in tabular form. It doesn't make too much sense in this case, since this indicator only has one age bracket, but you can see that this tabular visualization is there. And this is especially helpful for users that use, for example, tablets, where some of these charts might not be as helpful as on a desktop. You also have a sources tab that indicates where the data set was obtained from and for how long the variable has been available. You can also download the variable as a CSV file or as a PNG or SVG if you, for example, want to prepare a presentation about some slice of this data and you want to put it in a PowerPoint. You can export these visualizations as PNG files. I'm now going to switch to a more complicated set of indicators. I'm going to use the international migration just as an example. There are some indicators that are more complex. For example, if we consider this indicator here, the share of EU nationals employed by industry, if we click on the table, we see that there are a lot of sectors, right? There's manufacturing, financial and business services, and showing all of this in this line, in this bar chart here would be too busy. So if you want to prepare a presentation or want to present some stylized facts about a specific industry, you can use this blue toggle button to select which industries you would like to consider. So if you want to highlight just the construction industry across EU, non-EU and UK nationals, you can make these selections and get this plot here. If you now get to the downloads tab and export this as a PNG file, it's going to export just the construction bars. And that allows you to compile more bespoke presentations starting from this tool. Again, you have the data in tabular form, you have the source, you have the variable time span. This tool is also suitable for use on mobile devices. So if you want to share this with anyone or want to use it in the classroom or anywhere, you can also use it on mobile phones or tablets. It looks slightly different to accommodate the smaller screen size, but all the functionalities are preserved. Yes, that's the gist of the tool. I don't want to go too deep into it looking at the time, but we are of course happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Does anybody have any questions about the tool or anything you'd like to ask Daniel? We have one question. For clarification, this isn't real-time data. When is the data taken from the source data?
I'm happy to answer that. So it's a mixture. Mostly it isn't, because quite a lot of what the Department for Education has prescribed in the SAP toolkit is government data, which, as probably people know, is not real time. It's not updated on a regular basis, but it is refreshed on a quarterly basis frequently, or every number of months, depending on what the data source is. There is some data contained in this tool relating to job vacancies. I don't know if you want to go to that, Daniel, just to illustrate that point. So the job market data is based on a daily feed. So it's particular indicators that were incorporated into this. So it's not just job vacancies itself, but there's been analysis of raw data as it relates to particular sectors. So that's contained in the tool.
Thank you, Adam. Another question, when will this tool be available?
That's a question for OxLEP, but it's available in terms of its functioning right now.
I'm happy to answer
sorry,
that,
Sarah,
Mel.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just we're just finishing off some final snagging, working in partnership with Oxford Artificial Intelligence, and we hope to publish that very shortly on the website. We have a labour market information page on the OxLEP website. If you go to that page now, you can see the labour market information, which I published recently and also shared with you at the last forum. But that will be replaced by the Webtool. So if you keep an eye on that page, you'll definitely see that arriving fairly soon.
Thank you, Sarah. I think another question about can anyone access this information? And I think you've answered that, so thank you very much. Another question, can we cross-analyse the data and visualise using this tool, or do we need to download the data to be able to do this?
Adam, I guess that's a good question for you as the data expert. I would say you would need to download it through the tool.
Yeah, you would need to download the data through the tool as Daniel was demonstrating. Daniel, would you add anything?
Maybe I could add, as long as you are looking to cross-compare across regions, for example. So earlier when I made this example with the industry sectors, there are similar line charts that allow you to, for example, toggle different regions. So if you want to cross-compare in one indicator across regions, that's doable via this blue plus symbol. So you can have two lines in a chart and therefore compare. If you want to run more complex analysis, you would have to download the data.
Thank you, Daniel. I've got a question from Ed. I'm just going to hand over to you, Ed.
Oh, sorry, apologies, couldn't click on myself to unmute there. I was just wondering if this will completely supersede and replace the sort of semi-regular reports that OxLEP used to publish and send out, sort of, you know, summer and winter LMI type reports we used to get.
I can answer that, Mel. Yeah, so Ed, I don't know if you've been looking at the labour market information part of our website recently. During COVID, we have produced regularly a labour market information report, but we won't be continuing with the aforementioned reporting that you were talking about that used to come out quarterly. What we hope that will happen is that you will be able to learn how to use this web tool and therefore produce reports which are more bespoke to your needs. Does that answer your question, Ed?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Sally.
All right, thanks everyone. I think that's all the questions. That's all the questions in the chat box. Did anyone else want to ask?
Yes, Melanie, just before we move on, I was wondering, Daniel, could you do the screen share again so that we could show the apprenticeship data just very briefly, please?
Do you mean this one?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that there was some interest in apprenticeship data, so we just wanted to show what's available on that. So, for instance, apprenticeship starts, as you can see here. Are there any others? I'm trying to think.
Since I'm sharing the screen again, I might answer the question from earlier in a bit more detail. Just an example here. This is an example of a line chart, enterprises by sector. If you want to cross-compare two sectors now, if you say you want to cross-compare mining of coal and mining of metal, you can toggle these different sectors. So these are not particularly busy. So let's take these two. You can compare two sectors like this once you are narrow enough to stay within one indicator. If you now want to compare enterprises by sector and births of enterprises by sector or something along these lines, then you have to download, if that is a better answer.
Thank you, Daniel. One more question, I think, before we move on to the next section. And I'm not entirely technical, but is this something that can be linked to via an API? I hope that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, that's for Daniel.
Everything is possible. We have assembled for OxLEP a data warehouse. So we have all of these data archived. And once new data comes in, we update it at the highest frequency we can. So it would be quite easy to attach this to any other software if there would be the need for an API.
Great, thank you. Yes, Nick says thank you for answering the question. So thank you very much. That's all the questions that have come in through the chat. So thank you both. Oh, sorry,
Thank
one
you.
more quick question. One's just come in. Can new tabs be included, such as traineeships, T-levels, Kickstart scheme, as initiatives develop?
Obviously, anything can be included in terms of the tool at the moment. This is the current tool as it's set up, but I think that would be a question for OxLEP in terms of what it would wish to add to the tool moving forward, and also just to add to the response to the last question about the API. Once again, that would be a decision that OxLEP would need to make in terms of how users access the data. At the moment, it's meant to be accessed simply by linking to it via the OxLEP website, and then to use it as Daniel has been demonstrating. So I think that these are just further considerations that can be talked about amongst stakeholders.
Thank you, Adam. It's Sarah from OxLEP again. Just to add to that, we are very keen to understand what your future needs and developments are from this tool. And we will be sending out, I believe, Mel, a survey following this forum. We're very, very keen to understand what those developments are. At the moment, this tool has been funded through the Skills Advisory Panel grant, which is quite small. But you know, we're open to suggestions and developments for the future, and all of those ideas will be taken on board for that as we move along with it, and also how we retain the sustainability of this tool going forward should that grant funding be removed in the new CSR, for example.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, we will send you all a link once the tool is available. And as Sarah said, a few questions that if you could take the time to answer for us, that would be really helpful for us to think about what comes next and what you think of what we've got so far. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam and Daniel, for doing that. That's really helpful. Like I say, it is, Sarah reiterated, it is really important that we hear from you. It is cutting edge. I don't think anybody else has created this, and I know that we're going to be sharing it across the LEP network group to see what the interest is, and to really it's important that we hear from you, and this is why we're creating this forum, to really get interactivity with yourselves, to understand what the challenges are and how we can be supporting you, and hopefully this will be able to support you. So moving forwards, I'd really like to welcome Luke Mattam to really talk about destination data and how we can work together to improve the outcomes for young people. Luke.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, hello. I'm Luke Mattam. I'm the tracking manager from Oxfordshire County Council's EAT service. For anyone who doesn't know, EAT stands for Education, Employment and Training. I focus on tracking all young people who are in school years 11 to 13. So up to the September after their 18th birthday, we have a duty to track the destination of every young person in Oxfordshire. We'll also promote opportunities to young people as well as positive activities. In the wider EAT service, we have a casework team managed by Elaine North who will deliver face-to-face work for young people who are NEET. And we also have an online safeguarding team led by Jeremy Day. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I'm going to start with the boring part, and that is the duty. So Section 72 of the Education and Skills Act, this is the duty that states that all education providers have to inform their local authority of what young people are on roll with them. It overrules any GDPR, so there's no issues with data sharing. It's just something that has to be done. And we also want to know about early leavers and dropouts, young people who don't complete with you. So when I'm talking about destinations, I'm talking about what a young person's education, employment or training destination is. It's where they went, but also and what they progressed onto when completing training with you, but also if they left early. We have 13,000 young people to track this year, so it's quite a lot, and it's growing. It's a bigger cohort this year. So if training providers inform us of who they have on roll, it not only helps us focus on those that need support, but it also saves any confusion. We're not contacting your learners and confusing them, panicking them. So I sent a request out to independent training providers earlier this week, and thank you to those that have sent in any info. If you didn't receive a request, but you do have young people that you're working with, it would be great for you to send that through to me. And my email is on these slides at the start and the end, I think. If you're an apprenticeship provider, you probably don't need to worry so much, because we get a master list from the Education Skills Funding Agency each year that states every young person who's on an apprenticeship. Could I have the next slide, please?
Excuse me, Luke, can I just ask a quick question?
Yep.
Somebody has asked, by young person, is that an under 18? Can you just clarify the age range?
Yeah, so unfortunately we can't quite do it on actual age. We have to do it on academic age. So we worked up till the September after their 18th birthday in tracking. So that could be someone who's 18 and 364 days, or 18 and 1 day old. So yeah, just up until the September after their 18th birthday. And we will also support if they're NEET for an additional year. If they're care leavers or if they have an EHCP, we'll also support up until their 25th birthday. So there's a few different age ranges there.
Thank you, Luke.
It's all right. So how can you use destination data? So I found a couple of DFE guides on destination data. I'll admit that some of them are more school focused than others, but I do believe a lot of them have some tips that can be adapted to suit all providers. The main one I particularly liked, was the Informed Choices report, which is from December 2017. And it had a nice quote that I put in about how destination data should not be just be seen as statutory duty, but should also be used strategically. So rather than read the whole report to you, it's quite a long report, I was just going to highlight some of the contents around using destination data, and if it was something that interested you, you could go and find the report yourself. I can even link it at the end if that helps. So it states, by identifying where your leavers progress to, you can adapt your offer to better meet their needs. So you're looking at, where did our leavers go last year? How can we improve their destinations for our current learners? So it could be identifying any gaps, and they recommend, if you identify gaps in your program, from maybe you had a lot of leavers that didn't progress into what you thought they would, you could approach local partners and organisations to try and fill these gaps. A good example was there was a local company that then they noticed that they didn't have much expertise in website development and things like that. And a lot of their young people wanted to go into that. So they approached a local organisation, and they started to come in and teach the young people about website development. And it led to much better destination outcomes for their young people. It also talks about how destination data can be used to improve retention for next year as well as during the year. As destination data includes dropouts, you can use it to see, why did these young people drop out? So recording reasons as to why young people dropped out, and seeing if there are any emerging patterns. If there are, going back, adapting your program to try and reduce these. Destinations data should also be used when discussing future career pathways of current students. So it's a really good piece of evidence. Where did previous students go? What did they do with what you've taught them? So it's about ensuring that your young people have realistic goals. And when I say realistic, I do mean it both ways. So you want young people to think of a future career that is achievable for them, but also try and broaden their horizons. And if you can use previous leavers' destinations, it makes it much more real to them. Some of them might not have as much ambition as others. If you can show a previous student who did the same course as you went on to achieve this, it can open new doors for them. There's a good section on using LMI data with your destination data in your career discussions in that report, so that's well worth looking at. Looking at the other report I've listed, the Destination Data October 2018 report, it's a much shorter document, though admittedly it is very school focused, so it might not be as much use as the previous one. Going back to destination data quickly, if you don't collect it, how do you know if what you are doing is effective and that you are achieving good outcomes? Whilst achieving qualifications is very important, a lot of emphasis, particularly now around COVID, is being put on what young people go into to judge effectiveness. Education shouldn't just be about passing exams, but about getting the young people ready for the next step in their life. Destinations are the evidence of this success. This year we've seen a great increase in NEET young people coming from year 11, so leaving year 11 without a NEET destination. But at the same time, we've seen an increase in GCSE attainment. So there's clearly a disconnect there. It's not about them not achieving the GCSEs. It's about, do they know what destinations are out there for them? We need to be giving good advice and supporting them in the next step. So we've got particularly low numbers of apprenticeships at the moment. So last night I looked and we were at around 50% of what we would have been pre-COVID. So these are apprenticeship vacancies. And since March, as I've monitored it, we fluctuated between 33% and 66% of what we'd normally have. So there's much fewer apprenticeship opportunities available. These young people, they need to have backup plans, realistic next steps, and they need support. They need support from the education providers to guide them. We've had a lot of young people this year come to us saying they want an apprenticeship. I'm a huge advocate of apprenticeships, but we have to be realistic that there aren't as many at the moment, and these young people need a backup plan if they can't find an apprenticeship. One thing that I think is quite important is if you look at how colleges advertise themselves to parents and young people, or what all independent schools have on their websites, it will be X percent of our leavers went into education, employment or training, or X percent of our leavers got a place at an Oxford University. I appreciate that within Oxfordshire we have a wide range of training providers, some that take on a lot of young people who do not have the qualifications to progress into mainstream education. They support a disproportionate number of vulnerable young people, and I'm really grateful of the support that they do offer these young people. But why not use the destination data to shout about your successes, to show young people what they can achieve if they go to you? Don't just use your destination information as data or as a statutory duty. Use it as a valuable resource that can give you great feedback on your program. I know some providers will break down their destination data by personal circumstance. So it could be looking at all of our past cohort that had an EHCP, what worked well to get them good outcomes. Could be the same for young carers. They have these additional needs. How can we adapt our program, and what does the destination data show about how we're supporting these groups? I'm Probably a lot of you are well aware of this, but destination data just gives you that real life feedback on your successes. I possibly shouldn't be saying this, but if you look at when colleges and schools state X amount went into education, employment and training, they often don't include their dropouts, and they don't include the young people where they don't know what they went on to. I think this is a real shame that they take this group out. It's not effective use of destination data. If they don't know where everyone went, you can't effectively analyze how effective your program was. So it's really important to track all of your levers to make sure that you're fully aware of how successful your program was. Going forward, if you want to find any guidance and tips on using destination data, I would recommend searching around Gatsby Benchmark 3. Again, these benchmarks are for schools, but this is the benchmark that focuses on destination data and how it can be used in careers guidance. There's been a recent report from the Careers and Enterprise Company, and it's focusing on the Gatsby benchmarks, particularly around COVID. It's called Careers in Context 2020, a can-do guide. It's quite school focused, but I think it's particularly useful because it does take into account the current situation that we're all in. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So how can we help training providers in Oxfordshire? So we can share lists of all young people who are currently identified as NEET. We might take some of them out if we know they have particularly vulnerable circumstances at the moment, which means then that they're not currently ready to progress. But as we have a statutory duty to support these young people, it overrides any GDPR, so we can share this data. We are currently waiting on school and college leavers data. So we have enrolment data from all our education establishments, but we don't have all the leavers data in. It's due in on the 14th of October. When we have this data in, we should have a much clearer picture of who is NEET in the county. And then if people did want to request a list, we could set that up. Historically, what I have noticed is that some establishments would hide their NEET. Rather than say they're NEET, they would mark them as not known when they return the data to us. I think this is possibly to do with, there's a report called the Annual Activity Survey Report, and it breaks it down by every school in Oxfordshire, looking at where their young people were in November. I think some schools believe that having a not known is better than having a NEET on this report, so they sometimes hide their NEET young people in this not known category. I much prefer it if they were honest and said, we know that these young people did not progress into EAT. Not only does it help them identify where their careers guidance didn't work for these young people, it also means that when we make our first contact, we can be looking to support these young people straight away. I think this year we have moved away from this issue. I think nationally there is an expectation that NEET figures will increase, and I think in a way that's been good as schools and colleges have been more confident in saying this person is NEET, we can find them an opportunity, as there are less opportunities this year. We can also promote your opportunity by listing it on OxMe and including it in our mail outs. So we do a hot jobs weekly mail out, which includes 7 new opportunities each week. It gets sent to over 2,300 young people. We get pretty good open rates on that. And it also links back to all the opportunities that are listed on OxMe, which include every apprenticeship that's on the .gov site. We also do a weekly bulletins report, which includes all our opportunities on OxMe, and this goes out to over 300 professionals in Oxfordshire. We produced a Year 11 booklet. This goes to all Year 11s around February, March, and it's to ensure that all Year 11s are aware of the various options available to them, and not just the sixth form. So we want to make sure that they're aware of all their options. Will include all colleges, all training providers that we are aware of. So again, making sure you're on OxMe ensures that we include you in this booklet. And this year we did adapt it a bit to be more COVID specific. We did a what can you do now to get yourself ready for next year. So if you do have any opportunities that you want listed or included in our hot jobs, we also promote them on our social media. Please do send through to opportunities. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So how can you help us? So if a young person is leaving you and becoming NEET, please do let us know. Even better than that is if you get consent from them for a referral and complete a referral form. Either way, we will support these young people, but if there is a referral form, it allows you to give us some more of the sensitive information about maybe why they became NEET, and also allows us to immediately casework them rather than having to build that relationship up. Again, the best email address for that is eatreferrals@oxfordshire.gov.uk, and I can send out the referral form to anyone who wants it. Could I have the next slide, please? So finally, how can we help each other? So recently we've been sent from the ESFA a form about gaps in provision. So nationally, a lot of local authorities have raised this issue with the government, and so they're pushing authorities to fill in this form, but they want to know exactly why we need additional funding and additional programs and provision. So if we can demonstrate an unmet demand or a gap in provision, maybe a particular group who don't have suitable provision in Oxfordshire, and I know young offenders often gets brought up as a group that do struggle to find placements. If you send in this information, if schools, colleges, providers, all providers that work with young people send us in this information, we can be a central point to collate this information, to complete the form, and hopefully to bring in some additional funding for provision in Oxfordshire. I will just say that I know of another local authority who have started this process, and it's not a quick process, so the sooner we start it, the better. And that is it for me. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Luke. Did anyone have any questions for Luke? We haven't got any in the chat box at the moment. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to type anything in or raise a hand. Just comments saying very interesting presentation, Luke. Thank you.
Well, I'll take that. Thank you.
Very clearly, yeah. Nobody's got a hand up at the moment, and there are no questions in the box. So thank you, Luke, and we will share those links, those email addresses with you afterwards so that you can follow that up with Luke. And thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Mel.
Thank you, and thank you, Luke, for that. And I think it's really important. I don't know if people have had a chance to see a Guardian article today saying that youth unemployment in Britain is on course to more than triple to the highest level since the early 1980s, according to a report warning that the COVID generation could be lost to long periods of out of work. So I think it really highlights the importance of this, actually the outcomes and the destination data, how we can work collaboratively together to help young people, particularly those that are in need. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome James Jackson, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Partner at OAS, who's going to talk about his new role. I'm hoping that I'm sure this is actually going to give us a lot to discuss, which we could continue as kind of a round table possibly at the next meeting that we've got in March, and we'll share that date with you at the end. So can I welcome James to present?
Morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Sally, for that lovely introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is James Jackson. As Sally's touched on there, I'm the Industry Skills and Qualifications Manager. The Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Partner for OAS. I'm working on behalf of UKEA. And what I've come to do today is just talk to you a little bit about the ED&I journey that we have within OES and what we're looking to do, and how we're looking to approach that in collaboration with kind of 4 key audiences really. And those 4 key audiences are the apprentices themselves, on course, on programme apprentices and future applicants. We're also looking to target and work with our colleagues and employees, but more importantly, employers in the area, local area, and more broader nationally, and also parents. A big focus on that audience and that influencer there. So if we could just skip to the next slide, that would be fantastic. What I wanted to share with you today is, after a period of kind of assessment and review within OES. So OES is the Oxford Advanced Skills Centre, offering high-tech level 3 and 4 apprenticeships in engineering and manufacturing based at the Culham Science Centre. Having been open just over 12 months, we now have a focus and commitment to growing diversity and inclusion within apprenticeships, and the aim of our work in this space and the kind of programme of outreach activity, education, access and infrastructure looks at kind of these key objectives. So increasing the awareness of OES apprenticeships as a standard, improved access routes to level 3 and 4 apprenticeships within manufacturing engineering, as that is our offering, our learning offering, but then increasing diversity within applicants and on boards. But specifically, we want to target some key demographics that are broadly unrepresented within the engineering and manufacturing sector. So non-white EPIC, so EPIC refers to ethnic, population, intersectionality and cultures. You may better refer to that typically as BAME, but non-white EPIC or BAME. Females, neurodiversity, physical and or mental disabilities, and socioeconomically challenged and disadvantaged background applicants. These are the kind of key demographics that we feel and have identified are underrepresented within apprenticeships, but specifically manufacturing engineering sector. So we're going to target our work towards those audiences and towards those populations. We want to increase the volume and completion of successful level 3 and 4 apprenticeships. So everything that we do wants to kind of complement the level 3 and 4 apprenticeship and hopefully make it a more enjoyable experience for all learners and all parties involved, employers, employees, those delivering the provision of learning, but also the parent relationship as well as just overall better experience for the applicants and apprentices. Become recognised as EDI industry leading apprenticeship training provider. So we really want to lead the way in this space. And we want to develop ultimately a more inclusive workplace across our employer partnering relationships as well as what we have in centre. And then there's just a little quote there which kind of says, you know, it's improving inclusive access to apprenticeships before providing additional support to ensure apprentices are empowered and supported to complete their programme. So that's the journey that we started at OES, and we started that this year. As I say, OES has been open just over 12 months, and following a kind of initial period of establishing the provision of learning and embedding some key infrastructure that's already there. And there is some great stuff already there in terms of inclusive culture, in terms of welcoming and being able to support diversity of learners. In collaboration with UKEA and AMTC, OES feels that there is a need now to kind of put more focus, and that's where my role has come into play. And I've been with OES now just since the start of August, back end of July. Can we flip to the next slide, please? So this is just an introductory slide. The next slide after that gives just a high-level overview. If we can flip again, thank you. High-level pathway in terms of the journey that we're on. So ultimately, you know, just a very, very simple view of, you know, we've established where we are now, and that includes composing quite a comprehensive position statement in terms of OES as a training provider and our own culture, our own challenges, and the immediate recommendations and quick wins that we can establish and put in place. Alongside that, step 2 is kind of formulating a plan and program, a program that will be centered around, and hopefully you're going to see a lot more of this in the coming months, a campaign labeled as #BlankCanvas. #BlankCanvas speaks well to us at OES, and we believe speaks well to the overall approach and objective, whereby we are clearly committed to, doesn't matter what your background, doesn't matter what your ethnicity, your gender, doesn't matter your nuance in terms of additional learning needs and or send, we believe that everybody has the skills and opportunity and ability, #BlankCanvas, to succeed within apprenticeships. And we also want to start from the beginning again in terms of, right, what is it that we need to kind of deliver this journey. So we've got that. We've agreed some and already began to implement a number of quick wins within Centre and within our own culture. And then we've got a broader approval stage in process at the moment to confirm the necessary budget allocation to support some key work streams and some key deliverables. And then ultimately, step 3, as with any programme, is go and make it happen. There is a need to initiate a progress and review and reporting process within that, so we can understand real time what works well, what doesn't work well in terms of some of the initiatives and some of the activities we embark on. But ultimately, it's where are we now, what do we need to do, and let's go ahead and make that happen. And we're quickly moving into step 3 already. If we can just flip the next slide, please. So I just want to share with you now is the key activity required. And if we move on to the next slide, I want to share sight of 6 key work streams that we've identified. So as you can imagine, growing diversity and inclusion within apprenticeships within any sector, let alone the targeted specific sector of engineering and manufacturing, but across any sector and across any business culture, growing diversity and inclusion is a very, very broad piece of work. The number one critical step, in my experience, to establishing a pathway to success is breaking that down into, I won't say bite-sized, because none of this work is bite-sized, but breaking it down into components whereby you can have relative and specific focus, and then realign that with an overarching plan and programme. So I've identified the key work streams here for OAS that we want to focus on, which is outreach project activity, communication and media, allyship, education and communities, inclusive workplace, E9 metrics of progress and success, and a very, very important one, not by any means at last as in least and or less priority, but more important than probably most is the employer partnering piece there as well. So outreach activity, we're looking at the moment, and part of today is working with communities, working with employers to understand and identify opportunities to collaborate, share best practice and share platform to engage, identify learners from disadvantaged backgrounds, identify and educate parent audiences, across a number of different community-based projects. And we're not just looking at the Oxford area, but tactically we're starting out with a kind of more closer lens on the immediate Oxford area, and then expand out from that when we have evidence and proof of concept of some things that we've done and done well, worked well. Communication and media is largely about living and breathing ED&I. So ED&I has quite a very full-on calendar, if you will, if you look at kind of key events over the course of the year. And to date, we've already initiated focus and demonstration and sharing, if you will, celebration of National Inclusion Week, which we did some work around in September. You can go onto our web space, you can connect with any of our social media feeds on Instagram, Twitter, and you'll see we've put some videos there in talking about National Inclusion Week, talking about what inclusion means to OAS and where we are already being inclusive, but what more we can do. I definitely encourage you to check that out. We're currently in the throes of celebrating Black History Month for the first time at the Centre, and that again has a number of different strands and activities going on throughout the month of October. And we've got other events coming up in terms of World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October, and also we've got International Disability Awareness Day on the 3rd of December planned. So we've already initiated a calendar commitment and focus. But there's other things that we can do, there's campaign-led sponsorship and collaboration that we can do, and we want to kind of work internally, externally to kind of target key platforms and share platforms wherever possible. And we're going to wrap that up as a kind of #BlankCanvas campaign. Education, allyship, communities, it speaks for itself really, and that's part of what I'm here to do today, doing and talking to you about. But I want to kind of draw emphasis on the kind of parent and employer relationship and those key channels, in particular the parent channel as influencers. We know that apprenticeships in the UK are a huge opportunity for anybody from any background, but ultimately we also know that they are more weighted to white EPIC applicants. Non-white EPIC applicants are a minority within apprenticeships across the UK, specifically within the manufacturing engineering sector, We know that it is a predominantly male-dominated industry and sector. So we want to do something there in the gender space, and tapping into parents and employers and working with them in collaboration with them to raise the profile of the opportunities that we're afforded will have greater benefits to help us kind of move the dial in that space. Inclusive Workplace is about OAS as a centre. It's about bringing apprentices to the centre, through the centre, but making sure that they're supported. So we must live and breathe inclusion and diversity within our own centre, and then sharing that best practice with our employers and helping our employer partners understand how they can do that better, from point of attraction, through application, through assessment, and then on board and onto programme. And then ED&I metrics of progress and success. Speaking from experience, a number of organisations fail at the first hurdle when they don't make a commitment to understanding, well, what is the baseline of data here? What is our benchmark? What does success look like? Whether that be growth in numbers of successful applicants, whether that be specific diversity measures in relation to, as I say, gender, disability, neurodiversity, socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. What does it look like? Where are we moving the dial and where are we moving it to? So we've got a specific work stream that's looking at that. And at the moment, one of the key things that we're looking to do is reach out and understand some of the more geographical inclusive culture and data that kind of gives insight to that, so we can kind of build our work stream around that as well. And then employer partnering, establish that effective engagement forum with employers. Again, part of today's activity, we've got our own employer workshops taking place and scheduled to kind of reconvene those. We've had a disruption, if you will, due to COVID-19 from kind of early 2020, kind of March to now. We've had a bit of a disruption in terms of our engagement with employers, but we're picking that up very, very quickly off the back of kind of lifted restrictions, and hopefully going to see that kind of follow through into the new year. And that's really what we're about. These are the work streams that we want to kick off, and we're at the very early stages still in terms of establishing what that journey is going to fully entail. But part of today is to reach out to employers and communities to kind of help identify, as I say, those collaborative opportunities and share best practice, and also working to showcase that inclusive culture already has begun. But there is a need to understand more of the kind of local geographic data and opportunity that's available. So again, I would welcome anybody here to kind of get in touch with me. My details will be made available, I'm sure, through the forum that we've got here, to kind of reach out and have a chat about some of the work, some of the ideas that we've got bubbling away, and some of the stuff that we've already implemented in terms of quick wins. And through our employer forum and through key contacts here at OES, there's lots of avenues to kind of get in touch and collaborate and see what we can do. I mean, I suppose I've got a question for this forum, if anybody wants to share, because I'm really interested to understand what is happening in this space. It's a broad subject, broad challenge. And my question really is, does anybody on this forum today want to share what they're doing at the moment, any new initiatives that they've got live at the moment, anything in relation to this agenda that they feel is either working very well or it has worked very well in the past and we could get involved with. It's a kind of two-way share there. So that's my question to the forum, and I'm happy to take questions from anybody at the moment. But just thank you to OxLEP for having this opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, James. I've got a question from Ed. He's got a hand up. If we could go over to you, Ed.
Hi, James. Just an example of a project that we'd worked on previously with a housing association, where we promoted, or we worked with them to deliver a kind of taster day for construction skills for women. So they worked with some of the people that were their residents in their social housing. They promoted and got a group of women of various ages along to our Whitney campus, and we had a whole day of trying out carpentry, plumbing, brickwork, all that kind of stuff. And then the outset of that was for those that enjoyed the day and connected with it, they would be offered the opportunity of a work experience placement. For those work experience placements that went well, they had apprenticeship opportunities to direct those people towards.
Sounds brilliant. sounds brilliant. Would it be possible for Ed maybe for us to connect offline and have a bit more of a chat about that, understand that a bit better?
Yeah, absolutely, James.
Fantastic, fantastic. How will I best get Ed's details following today's forum? Is that something that could be shared with me?
We can sort that out, James. Absolutely happy to.
Fantastic, thank you.
Ed. Mel, have we got any more questions?
We've got a hand up from Fiona. If I could just pass to Fiona.
There you go, I'm unmuted, thank you. Just building on Ed's comment about the Insight Day that he ran for the women. At Oxford, we run micro-internships for our students, and they've been hugely successful. So we run longer work placements where they are paid, but the micro-internships run between 2 and 5 days on a voluntary basis. And it just struck me during these presentations that actually there'd be a bit like work experience for adults. And I'm really happy to share the structure of what we do. We mostly, the micro-internships are mostly delivered through local organisations. And there's a direct correlation between some of our poorest students from household incomes of less than £16,000 making more applications for micro-internships because they're seen as very accessible. So it's not like they have to spend a lot of time, but it's a great way of kind of complementing what some of the further education training courses are providing with some kind of, sort of real life experience within organisations. They're also not a great burden for organisations to offer because they're so short term. Really happy to talk about this offline.
Again, Fiona, I would be really keen to kind of have a chat with you and understand a bit more about that as well. We have looked at 2 kind of key recommendations really in terms of what we refer to as special projects or initiatives, which is in line with or a little bit like the kind of government kickstart program. We kind of thought, well, is there a potential to kind of fund and sculpt a kind of 6-month placements where we can kind of do pre-assessment work in terms of suitability as a candidate for ongoing apprenticeship and employment, and kind of maybe even do a recommendation at the back of that to our kind of employee partners. But we've also talked about taster days, special initiative taster days, which is more in line with what you're talking about there, Fiona.
Yeah, kind of.
2 days or 5 days.
So insight days are very much where, people kind of go and nose around what particular job functions or sectors to see whether that's something that they might be interested in. The micro internships are slightly different, and although they are typically only 5 days long, actually the candidate is expected to contribute positively to the organisation. So the organisations give them useful projects for them. We ran them, and I fully appreciate that we have the privilege of working with slightly young people, very dynamic young people, but in those 5 days they absolutely achieve extraordinary things. And when I was allowed to run the pilot at Oxford University, everybody said, oh, it's they're not going to do very much in 5 days, but actually we had students design surgical equipment, we had young students set up charitable radio stations, run social media campaigns. And I'm just wondering if that's, perhaps that's something we can talk about a little bit further down the line, but it was a gift to Oxford University from an organisation in Copenhagen, and we shared it around as best we can. So there's a lot of other UK institutions who are running it as well.
I'd love to connect offline and so let's have a chat about that. I think that'd be valuable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, James. I mean, I think this topic is probably worth us picking up at the next meeting. I think I'm hoping that we can really have a think about it. I'd like to sort of understand what other providers are doing, and really, see where the gaps are and how we can work and support those young people. So I think there's lots of opportunities and how we can collaborate, and hopefully that's really highlighted at the meeting today, is the opportunities for all of us to work together. Just conscious of time, I know we're just running over by a few minutes, so it gives me the opportunity to kind of round up and say thank you for attending today. The next meeting we've got in the diary is same time, 10 till 11:30 on the 11th of March next year. Seems a long way away, but seems to come around really quickly. If you have got any topics that you would like to be included, that you'd like discussing, we really want to hear from you. Please email us at skills@oxfordshirelep.com. I just want to say thank you so much for all our presenters today, and also a big thank you to our skills team behind. This is the first time that we've actually run our own webinar, and certainly much more interactively, so we're on a massive learning curve ourselves, and so I want to say thank you to Mel and Katie for leading on this, and we are the team actually within the LEP that's leading on running GoToWebinars, so we're sharing our best practice with the wider organisation as well. And just a couple of takeaways that I've learnt from today is really Luke Massingham that was talking about actually there's 50% less apprenticeships through pre-COVID. I think and young people need to have a backup plan. I think that's a really important takeaway. Things we all know things are challenging, but I really want us to be able to see how we can work and identify and support young people, those who are, as James would say, they're epic. I think that's a really positive phrase rather than BAME, and how we could be using that. And also, just finally, is there something that we can all be doing to, as part of that hashtag blank canvas? I think there's an opportunity there for us to actually look at that and how we can perhaps work as a campaign across Oxfordshire about what that could mean for providers. So again, finally, just thank you very much for your time. Apologies for running over. I hope this has been useful. There is a survey at the end. It does help us understand if it's meeting your needs. We want to know what we could do better, what we would like to be included in further meetings. Please let us know, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.